The freshwater shrimp is one of the very best baits that you will get for freshwater fishing here in Southeast Australia. And today I'm going to show you how easy it is to catch them. Hey you! You're watching Robbie Fishing. Now before I get started, I want to clarify something. Is it a shrimp or is it a prawn? Here where I live in Wangaratta and everywhere in this region, everybody calls them a shrimp. What did you catch your fish on, mate? I caught it on live shrimp, or I put a shrimp worm cocktail. But when I make a video and I say I'm using shrimp or I've caught shrimp, I often get comments like, this is Australia, mate. They're not shrimp, they're prawns. And in some parts of Australia, they call them prawns. But here we call them shrimp. Now, to throw a spanner in the works, I Googled them once, so I've done a bit of research, and technically I believe they are a prawn. But anyway, we call them shrimp. Everybody around here knows them as shrimp. So in this video, I'm going to talk about catching shrimp. Freshwater shrimp are a small crustacean, or they're a prawn, and they are found throughout the Murray-Darling Basin. I find from my observations, I don't find them too far up the system. I live in Wangaratta, and I do catch them in the rivers upstream of Wangaratta, but not too far upstream. Once I start getting up into the hills a bit further, I start seeing less shrimp. They seem to prefer the lower, deeper, slower waterways. I find they're a bit similar to yabbies in the sense that I don't catch them in the cooler months. I usually start catching them around October, November, and I stop catching them around about March or April. That varies a little bit from season to season, but usually it's the warmer months when the shrimp come out. In the springtime just gone, I didn't really start catching any shrimp until December. We had a bit more rain than normal, we had some cooler weather, and the water has stayed a bit cooler for a bit longer, and the shrimp are a little bit delayed in coming out. But they are out now. I was fishing with my daughter Holly the other night, and I got heaps and heaps and heaps of shrimp bites, and they keep stealing our worms, and they were driving us mad. So anyway, now it's the middle of summer, it's a good time to go and catch shrimp. There are a whole heap of different type of shrimp nets on the market, but my favourite, and the ones that I recommend the most, are these collapsible bait traps. There is a moulded plastic green one that clips together. It works very well also, but they're quite a bit more expensive and they don't fold down. These you can usually pick them up for around $10 or so, maybe a little bit less. It's called collapsible because it collapses down for easy storage. It's light, it's easy to carry around, they take up no room, and they're very effective. Let's open this one up. I've put cord on this. It's always a good idea when you buy these kind of shrimp traps to either put extra cord or replace the cord, because you only get a metre or so of cord with them. Now that is the trap. If you look at that there, you'll see it's got a funnel in each end with a little hole. The shrimp go into there, looking for the meat or the bait, whatever you're using for bait, and then they can't find their way out and they become trapped. Now, the rules do vary on funnel sizes from state to state. Here in Victoria it's 5 centimetres. In New South Wales I think it's only 3. It could be 3.5. You'll have to check. So these nets here, I bought them in Victoria. They're compliant in Victoria. But if I use this one in New South Wales, it's outside spec. It's over spec. It's oversized and technically it's illegal. Now these are also good for yabbies as well as catching minnows and other stuff. But today it's all about shrimp. So we've got our cheap bait traps. And also, while I'm talking about laws, don't forget in different states you need to label your floats, or I've got Coke bottles on mine with my credentials on them, but you need to put your credentials on your float and just make sure you follow the laws, and all that stuff can be found in the, normally on the internet under the various fisheries websites. In Victoria here it's VFA for Victorian Fisheries Authority.vic.gov.au. In New South Wales just search New South NSW DPI Fisheries and you can find the rules there, and you'll find the other states. Anyway, let's go and get organised. We've got our shrimp nets. Now we need some bait. I've got some red meat here. This is actually some venison offcuts. My friend Dave, he's a keen deer hunter, and I scored this beautiful big venison backstrap recently, and I just sort of trimmed a little bit of the rough stuff off the edges, and I've got a little bit of offcuts here. They go in the pouch. These bait traps here have a pouch. I'm going to cut that meat in half. I've got 2 of these nets. I call them nets, but they're traps. I'm going to put some red meat in there, then I've just got to find somewhere to put the traps in, or the nets in. Right, it's time to bait the nets. Check this out. On a venison backstrap, there's a big long sinewy bit under the bottom. You can see there's like lines. I normally just cut down and across, and then cut it into steaks. And that's how I like to eat my venison backstrap. So I've got a little bit of the sinewy stuff and a bit of red meat and stuff on the bottom there. That can go in this net. And this one here it can go in this net. And they are ready to go. I'll just do the zipper up on this other one. We'll go put the nets in. Right, now these nets are baited up, ready to go. I'm going to switch to my action camera now. Let's go put the nets in. Now the river's looking very good, and the first thing we need to do is find a good spot to put these nets. Where is a good spot? See, if I was crayfishing, I'd want my nets over there under that steep bank where it's as deep as possible, because I find the crayfish like to be in the deepest parts of the river. The shrimp, that's not the case. There will still be shrimp in the deepest parts, but you don't have to go there. In fact, you're better off not to. Even if I had a boat, if I dropped one of these really light shrimp nets out there in that current, that'd sink on an angle and most likely end up snagged, and there'd be no benefit at all in doing that. So these can just go close to the bank. I was fishing down here with Holly only a couple of days ago, and the river has dropped about a foot since then. Wow. Now I can just walk out here onto that log or onto that mud and throw a net out there and I will catch shrimp. But I want to try and find a little bit of vegetation. If you can find water around the grass, look at that other bank over there, and you can see grasses and stuff going into the water. That's a good looking spot for shrimp. What happens if I come up here? Grasses, snags, just places where shrimp can hide. Around these branches out here looks like a really good spot to catch shrimp. I might throw one out there, nice and close to all them snags. I'll dip it into the, if the cord's long enough. I'll unwind the cord, put my foot on the float so that I can't throw the whole thing in. Now I like to dip these nets into the water just to make them wet, because once they're wet, they become a bit heavier and a little bit easier to throw. And I reckon out there near them snags looks like a pretty good spot. Right, there's one net in. Now I'll wrap this around here, just in case the current grabs it and washes it away or something. But let's find somewhere for the other net. That's a nice looking bank, lots of snags, lots of grasses and stuff. See if I can get down there without breaking my neck. Or getting bitten by a snake, whichever one comes first. Just there looks alright, I reckon. I'll throw it in there, next to all those snags and branches and stuff. The current isn't your friend with these types of nets, because they're so light. The current will wash the nets downstream pretty quickly. But that's looking pretty good right there. So I'll wrap that around the tree, and I'll come back and check them in a little while. Right, it's 11:45 AM. I'll give these nets half an hour or so and then I'll go and check them. While we wait for the nets, let's talk about storing shrimps. How's the best way how do you look after them? How do you keep them alive? These types of buckets are invaluable. I bought this one at Adventure Camping and Fishing a couple of years ago. It's a big blue bucket and it holds lots of water. And it's got that inside, that insert that you can pull out. So when you pull that out, all the water drains and you're just left with the shrimp, or yabbies or whatever other bait you're using. Makes it easier for you to grab them and hold them. But most importantly, shrimp need a high level of dissolved oxygen in their water. They're not like yabbies. Yabbies can live in a bucket of water for months. Shrimp will die in just an hour or two because they'll use up the oxygen in the water and then they'll die. But with this, you'll see here it's got a little hole in the top. You can put an aerator in this bucket. And I've done that with this bucket in a video a few years ago. I showed you how to do this. You run the plastic pipe through, you put the aerator in with a little stone on the bottom that blows the bubbles, and you just sit the aerator on the top. You can get battery powered aerators and they're very slow and quiet, but they're enough to pump oxygen into the water and keep the shrimp alive. Or you can get ones that just plug into the wall at home, or if you're lucky like me and you've got a couple of EcoFlow units floating around, my EcoFlow will power a little aerator for a very long time with one of these. So if you want to keep shrimp alive in a bucket, you need to have an aerator in there. That goes in there and it just blows bubbles into the water and then keeps it good. Now, if you haven't got an aerator, there is a way around it. You can just get a bit of string, tie it to that and sit that in the water. The good quality water that the shrimp are living in will just push through and ensure that there's plenty of oxygen in the water. But you can't leave them for long in the bucket. So say you're in a boat, you want to leave them in the water beside the boat. When you move spots, put some fresh water in, That'll buy you a little bit of time until you get to your next spot. Then when you pull up, drop that back down in the water again. That's how you look after shrimp, and that's the best way to store them. I didn't bring an aerator with me today because I'm actually not going to be keeping any shrimp. This is just a demonstration on how to catch them and store them. Anyway, let's wait half an hour or so, then go and check the shrimp nets and see if we've done any good. Well, let's check these nets. They've been in for about half an hour or so. And this time of the year in this area, this is the Ovens River, that should be long enough. Now, while I was waiting for these nets, I've done a bit of research. These are scientifically known as Paratya australiensis. Now, there is another species called Macrobrachium australiensis, and they're the real small ones. But anyway, Paratya australiensis, I didn't even know that myself till just now. Now, just a little quick bit of research told me that they're usually found around the edges of the streams, which is what I said, and that they're usually found in the lower, slower. They're in ponds and lakes and lower, slower, deeper flowing creeks like this. So it sort of backs up what I said. But I did notice that they are called a glass shrimp. There was no reference to the word prawn anywhere. They're a glass shrimp. Right, let's check and see if we've got any glass shrimp. Usually you can hear them. I've got one. Wow, I thought I would have heard it. Oh, I've got one little one. I thought I'd probably have about 20 in there. Sometimes you'll check the nets after half an hour like that and there'll be about 20 or 30 of them in there. I'll take a photo of this. This is only a small one. If they grow a lot bigger, I'll take a photo so you can zoom in on it. See if I can find where I dropped it. Come on, mate. Right, now let's put him back. See you later, mate. I only caught one. That was actually quite disappointing. I thought there'd be about 30 in there. Maybe I might move the net somewhere else and try again, I reckon. Here's a pretty good looking spot. I'll lower it right in front of, in amongst all these branches and trees. These can be really good spots in close to like logs and stuff like this. Right, I've got it in there. I can actually see the net. The water's only about 5 centimetres over the net. It's quite shallow, but that's okay. There's lots of logs, lots of shade. Hopefully I can do better there than what I did in the other spot. That was a bit disappointing to only catch one. Let's hope the second net has a few more in it. Well, hopefully this net does better than the other net. I can hear flicking. Oh yes, we have some shrimp. That's good. This was a better spot. Maybe it's a bit shadier or a bit more vegetation. There's not a lot in there, but there's half a dozen. There's a couple of nicer sized bait ones in there too. I'll get a quick photo of these. It's easier with these action cameras to get a photo and to zoom in on the photo to give you a good look at what a shrimp looks like than it is to show you with the action camera. Right, what I'm going to do now, which is exactly what I do when I'm fishing, is I'm going to leave them shrimp in there. After a while, a few of them might work out how to get out, but for the best part, most of them remain trapped. When I'm fishing, rather than storing them in a bucket, I usually just leave them in the water like that in the net, and then just pull the net up each time I need a shrimp. Well, that's how you catch shrimp, but I'll give them another half an hour or so and to see if I can, I'm curious to know whether that real shady loggy spot, despite being shallower, is going to be any better for shrimp. Now it's time to check these nets again. Well, it's not really time, it's only been about 20 minutes since I put them in, but that'll have to do because I've got somewhere I've got to be this afternoon. Anyway, the only thing I haven't really spoken about is bait. With regards to bait, any kind of meat will do. As mentioned earlier, I've got some sort of offcuts of some venison. You can use sausages, you can use chicken, a bit of a chop, carp, small redfin, any kind of meat will do. Some people will tell you to use soap. I've tried using soap and I caught a few shrimp on soap. I didn't catch any yabbies with it, but I did catch a few, but not a lot. And some people might tell you to try using gum leaves, and I've done that as well. I filled them up with gum leaves and I caught a few shrimp on the gum leaves. The gum leaves worked better than the soap, but any kind of meat will work better than either of those two baits. And of course dry dog food, because that's kind of meat based anyway. Dry dog food is always a good shrimp bait. Anyway, it's only had about 20 minutes, but has it done any good? Oh, listen to them all. That's more like it. You can hear them flicking around. There was only one in there before when I put that back. Actually, I think I threw that back in the river anyway, didn't I? Which means there would have been none. And there's probably, just in the last 20 minutes or so, I've caught 6 or 7 shrimp. They're not big, but let's have a look. We've got 2, 3, 4. Look at the difference in colour between these two. One of them is just about jet black. That one's really dark. 5, 6. There's number 7. Come on, mate, quick. I've got in 7, 8. I've got to get them back in the water pretty quick. They don't live long out of the water, shrimp. I'll have a look and double check that there's no more in there shortly, but I'll get these back in first. So there's 8 sort of medium-sized shrimp. They're not the biggest shrimp, but they're big enough to catch fish anyway. So moving the net from that spot up there to down here in amongst these logs has worked very, very well. Let's have a quick check and make sure I haven't left any in the net. There is one in there, you know. So I've got 9. And that was only in about 20 minutes or so. I think that's it. That is it. Let's go check the other net. Right, as I go to check this last net, just one last tip. Low light periods of the day, like with so many other fish and crustaceans, the low light period time of the day is the best. So while you will catch shrimp all day, as I've demonstrated now, you certainly do catch more around sunset and sunrise and throughout the night. Yep, I can hear you flicking. I can see 8 shrimp in there. So there's 8 shrimp in there. Most of them are only medium size. One of them's a large shrimp. That's a nice size bait shrimp. He's perfect. The smaller ones will work, and they certainly get a lot bigger than that. Like that's a good size bait fishing shrimp. It's not a monster. They certainly get bigger, but that's big enough. The others are a bit smaller, but they still work. And if you're catching lots of small ones like these, you can put 2 or even 3 on the hook, and the fish will still grab them. If you are bait fishing with a shrimp, the best way to rig it is to put the hook straight through the tail. Just have it dangling by the tail. Is that all of them? Oh, look at the size of this one. Look at the size of that weeny little shrimp. When I was researching earlier, one thing that I read was these shrimp, the glassy shrimp I think they call them, they live for 2 years and they breed late spring, or in spring and early summer. So I wonder if that tiny weeny little shrimp there, that could be only a couple of months old. Catching shrimp, it's easy. Now, while a lot of this stuff might be pretty well known to a lot of us, there are a lot of people that are coming into fishing that haven't been fishing before, that don't know a lot of this stuff. And if you're one of them and you've found this video useful, well, I'm glad I was able to help. Thank you all very much for watching.